That wild disclaimer on 1000 lb's Sisters might be a satire, but it weirdly forces us to face one dark truth _ hello viewers, welcome back to my channel. For 1000 Pound Sister latest news update, please subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon. In the ever-evolving landscape of reality television, 1000 lb's Sisters has become one of the most controversial and talked about shows in recent years. Following sisters Amy and Tammy Slaton as they attempt to lose weight and improve their health after both suffered from severe obesity, the show is equal parts inspiring, heartbreaking, and disturbing. But beyond the emotional roller coaster of failed diets, medical setbacks, and family drama, there's one element that stands out not for what it says, but for how absurdly exaggerated it is. That would be the disclaimer at the beginning of each episode. You know the one. The one that seems like it was written by someone who's never watched the show, or perhaps someone trying to cover every possible legal loophole imaginable. It lists dozens of disclaimers about the accuracy of the content, the portrayal of events, and the motivations behind the participants' actions. And yet, the more you watch, the more you realize something strange. This disclaimer might actually be a form of satire. Not just satire, dark, biting, self-aware commentary on the nature of reality TV itself, and the uncomfortable truths it forces us to confront. Let's take a moment to look at the actual text of the disclaimer. This program depicts the personal experiences of individuals featured in the series. This program is designed to educate, entertain, and inform viewers about the challenges people face with obesity. The situations, relationships, and outcomes depicted are not guaranteed, typical, or expected to be representative of any individual's experience. This program is dramatized and does not represent medical advice. It goes on for several more lines, covering everything from editing choices to psychological effects on the subjects. But even that short excerpt reveals something peculiar. The disclaimer tries so hard to distance the show from reality that it becomes its own kind of fiction. It reads less like a legal safeguard and more like an absurdist parody of media ethics. In fact, if you stripped away the context of 1000 lb's Sisters, this disclaimer could easily serve as the opening monologue of a dystopian comedy about a society that can no longer tell the difference between truth and entertainment. And maybe that's exactly what it is. Let's be honest, reality TV has long been a genre that borders on satire, whether intentionally or not. From The Real World to Keeping Up with the Kardashians, these shows have always walked a tightrope between genuine human emotion and manufactured drama. They're edited, manipulated, and curated to maximize conflict, ratings, and emotional engagement. But what makes 1000 lb's Sisters different is that it doesn't try to hide the manipulation. In fact, the show leans into it so heavily that it starts to feel like a meta-commentary on the entire reality TV industry. The disclaimer isn't just a warning label, it's a mirror held up to the audience, forcing us to acknowledge our complicity in consuming this kind of content. When we watch 1000 lb's Sisters, we're not just watching Amy and Tammy struggle with their health, we're also watching ourselves, our voyeurism, our judgment, our fascination with pain and transformation. And the disclaimer knows it. By listing every possible way the show could be misleading, it subtly implicates us in the deception. It tells us, what you're about to see may not be real, but you already knew that. You came here for the spectacle anyway. Shows like My 600 lb Life and 1000 lb Sisters * fall into a specific subgenre of reality TV, the medical transformation documentary. These programs follow individuals suffering from extreme obesity as they undergo life-altering surgery and lifestyle changes. They are deeply emotional, often devastating, and sometimes uplifting. But they are also deeply exploitative. And here's where the satire comes in, because while the disclaimer claims the show is meant to educate, entertain, and inform, the reality is that the educational component is minimal compared to the dramatic spectacle. The camera lingers on close-ups of swollen limbs, hospital beds, crying relatives, and moments of failure far more than it explains the science of bariatric surgery or the psychology of addiction. So why include such a clinical-sounding disclaimer? Because it creates a false sense of legitimacy. It gives the illusion that this is a public service, when in reality, it's another product designed to hook viewers through trauma. The show wants to have it both ways to profit from tragedy while claiming to raise awareness. And in doing so, it unintentionally, or perhaps intentionally, satirizes the entire concept of reality-based programming. It mocks the idea that these shows can ever truly be objective or educational. By including a disclaimer that sounds like it belongs to a medical journal, the show highlights the absurdity of trying to present emotionally charged, heavily edited footage as anything resembling factual reporting. If all of this sounds like overanalysis, consider this. The real horror of 1000 LB Sisters isn't the wait, the surgeries, or the breakdowns. It's the realization that we, as a culture, have become so desensitized to suffering that we consume it as entertainment and then try to justify it with legal language. That disclaimer is more than just a throwaway footnote. It's a confession. It admits that the show isn't real, that the people aren't fully in control of their narrative, that the producers shape the story, manipulate the emotions, and decide what gets seen and what gets cut. And yet, despite all of that, we keep watching. We keep watching because we want to see if Amy will relapse. We want to see if Tammy will stay sober. We want to see if their lives get better or worse. We are addicted to the arc of their stories, even when we know those arcs are constructed. And in that addiction lies the darkest truth of all. We don't really care about Amy and Tammy as people. We care about them as characters in a show. That's the satire, not just of reality TV, but of us, the audience. The disclaimer isn't just protecting the network from lawsuits, it's holding up a mirror to our moral ambiguity. One of the most powerful tools in satire is irony, saying one thing while meaning another. And the 1000 LB Sisters disclaimer is dripping with it. By framing the show as a legitimate educational program while simultaneously admitting that nothing in it can be trusted, the disclaimer undermines its own purpose. It's like saying this is important, but also none of it matters. That contradiction is classic satire, and satire works precisely because it allows us to laugh at things we might otherwise find too painful to confront directly. If someone were to make a serious documentary about the exploitation of vulnerable people in reality TV, we'd probably avoid it. But when that same message is wrapped in a ridiculous disclaimer that seems like it belongs in a courtroom rather than a streaming platform, we start to notice. We start to think. Satire doesn't preach, it provokes. And in this case, it forces us to ask questions we might not want to answer. Why do we watch? What do we get out of seeing people at their lowest points? Are we helping by raising awareness, or are we just rubbernecking? Of course, not everyone sees 1000 LB Sisters as satire. For many fans, it's a deeply moving show that sheds light on the realities of obesity, addiction, and mental health. There are moments of genuine compassion, real growth, and heart-wrenching vulnerability. But those moments exist alongside scenes that feel staged, manipulated, or unnecessarily cruel. There's a fine line between empathy and exploitation, and sometimes the show dances right on that line. Which brings us back to the disclaimer, because it's not just a legal shield, it's also a cultural signal. It tells us that the people behind the show are aware of the ethical gray area they're operating in. They know that what they're showing might not reflect the full truth. They know that some viewers will be inspired, while others will judge. And instead of addressing that complexity head-on, they hide behind legalese. That's the joke, that's the satire, that's the dark truth. Ultimately, the wild disclaimer at the beginning of 1000 LB Sisters might seem like just another annoying part of the show, the kind of thing you skip past to get to the drama. But if you stop and read it, really read it, it reveals something deeper. It reveals that we've created a world where the truth needs to be framed in layers of disclaimers, deniability, and distancing language. It reveals that we're okay with watching people suffer as long as we can say we're doing it for educational purposes. And it reveals that sometimes the most effective critique of our culture doesn't come from documentaries or think pieces, but from the bizarre, over-the-top warnings that open the very shows we claim to criticize. So next time you see that disclaimer, don't skip it. Read it, think about it, and ask yourself, are you watching the show, or are you part of it?